Before this meeting is called to order, I would like to call Mr. Anderson, Mr. Capello, and Mr. Kim to be sworn in. Okay. Please read the oath stating your name, and you can skip the last section if you do not want to repeat it.
Together? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Repeating your own names.
Okay.
Yep.
I,
Michael Anderson, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. Do we need the next word too?
Yes.
I, James Kim, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you don't mind.
And you got to say, with liberty and fraternity.
Yeah.
This meeting is called to order at 6:02 p.m. This meeting of the Denville Board of Education is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Daily Record and or the Star Ledger of Morris County. It has been delivered to the Township Clerk and has been posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office and at each of the school buildings in the district. Dr. Bruno DeTasson will not be joining us tonight. Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Kim?
Here.
Mr. Cass?
Here.
Mr. Capello?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mrs. Sedalis?
Here.
The annual school election held November 7, 2023 are as follows. Mr. Michael Anderson, 2,857. Mr. James Kim, 2,819. Mr. Dino Capello, 2,808. Write-ins, 74. Total of 8,558. At this time, I will ask for nomination for board president.
Damaris, we missed the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. Let's go back. And at this time, I will ask for nomination for board president.
I would like to move Mr. Kim, nominate him for board president.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll roll call. Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Kim?
Yes.
Mr. Cass?
Yes.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Kim. Mr. Kim, you can assume the leadership of the meetings.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your faith and confidence. I will now take nominations for Vice President, please.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Moore.
I'll second that nomination. Ms. Kurowski, roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis.
Yes.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for the faith and confidence in myself and in Dr. Moore. I certainly have big shoes to fill following Dino's, Mike's, and Laura's leadership over the past couple of terms. Drawing from inspiration from other boards, and after witnessing change happen at the delegate assembly level over the past year, I've decided that when I took this role, I was going to challenge myself. And I'd like to challenge the board as well with the following. The first is to see if we can take more positions, more resolutions. I've seen a wide range of resolutions on the agenda over the past 6 years that I've been on the board, from nominations to board members of the year to, the traditional resolutions. But sitting in the delegate assembly, I've also seen resolutions to challenge different aspects of what the board faces when it comes to making decisions and having us the proper tools to function as a board. And so, for example, I mean, some of the resolutions or thoughts that I've had is, how can we challenge the state? How can we challenge the legislation and regulations more? So, for example, school bus funding. It has to be taken out of the regular budget. And if we do want to seriously make a move towards electric school buses, why couldn't we use reserves? So I'd like to, maybe propose a resolutions to challenge that. And seeing how the delegate assembly worked, I found it refreshing. I found it interesting that they would come up with these resolutions, and then once it's passed on the township level, then it could be brought up to the delegate assembly level. So, with COA and everything else, do we want to take an official stance and maybe challenge the state and say, hey, all the COA stuff is really putting strains on boards across the state. Even the CDL restrictions, this is a hot topic with Don and myself, and so maybe we could take a position, propose a resolution, and then maybe propose it down to the delegate assembly. And that led to some more experience that I have as I participated in more of the county level board meetings, et cetera. And I challenged our board to, attend. I thought our turnout at the workshop was fantastic, and I hope that we continue that level of attendance. But even maybe increasing our attendance or presence at the delegate assembly and the county meetings. I know that we are strapped for time. Our time is important and all that, but it's a challenge that maybe that we could take a look at as a board. So, and one of the things that I took away from the workshop as well is the governance side of things. There were, and this sort of sums up the thoughts that I've had, is that some districts have a governance committee. And so I think that is something that I would like to bring up. And one of the first things is to maybe set up an ad hoc governance committee to see how that works. And maybe that transitions into a more permanent committee. Things like board certifications, revisiting board goals, And, even like taking a look at our bylaws. I don't know how long our bylaws have been sort of refreshed. So that's something that could be discussed during a different governance type committee as well. So again, I appreciate and thank everyone's confidence and support. And so I'm looking forward to a highly productive year, assuming we all have the time for it. So. There are the committees moving on to the next one. If there is interest in the governance committee as well as any other committees that you'd like, I'd be certainly happy to try to publish who's going to be part of the committees. I know finance committee's got a lot of work to do coming up, so I'll make that a high priority for me to assign whoever wants to be whatever committee. And one of the first things I'd like to change to this agenda is the code of ethics seems to be buried at the end of the meeting for good of the cause. But since we are in a reorg section, I would like to see if we can do the code of ethics now, if there are no objections. So Damaris, is that something that we just simply, I know in the past we did a round robin where we had one board member speak towards or recite what's on the code of ethics. So should we do that now, and can we do that now?
That's entirely up to the board president.
Great. So if we don't mind, Mr. Capelli, you want to start it off with the first one, and we'll read it down the line. Thank you.
I'd be happy to. A school board member shall abide by the following code of ethics for school board members. 1, I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
B, I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
C, I will confine my board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
D, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run.
E, I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board.
F, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
G, I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools.
H, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer.
I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
And J, I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution.
Thank you very much. If everyone can please sign the acknowledgement of receipt, and we'll pass it to Ms. Gorowski. All right, fantastic. So I would now like to open it up for public discussion, agenda items only. It is now 6:14 p.m. Ricky, is there anyone on the meeting right now? Okay.
And since if you look at your paper copies, there's a couple times that are not accurate. The ones that are online are accurate. These were printed prior to us making any of those changes, just so you guys know the times are right online.
Steve, what do you mean the times on the agenda, like with the start time of the meeting?
If you see the reorg meeting says 6 p.m. and then it says that the meeting line will open at 7:30 p.m. all the times are accurate on both agendas online.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, seeing no one in the chambers and no one online, we'll close open public at 6:15 p.m. And we'll move on to the regular agenda. Appointments. Any volunteers to read Section 5 appointments?
I can read it.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Sure. I'd like to motion, number one, let it be resolved that the board appoints the firm of Nisavokia and Company LLP as auditor for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under the New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints the firm of Richards and Summers Agency as insurance agent of record for 2024 for board liability, property, workers' compensation, bonds, and automobile, school vehicles insurance. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints Cleary, Giacobbe, Alfieri, Jacobs LLC as board attorney for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under the New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints Schiarello, Cornell, Merlino, McKeever, and Osborne LLC as board attorney for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under the New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints the firm of Brown & Brown Incorporated as insurance agent of record for 2024 for the school district's health benefit insurance. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints Phoenix Advisors, LLC, as the continuing disclosure agent and independent registered municipal advisor, IRMA, of record for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education appoints Genesis as the accounting, personnel, and payroll software vendor for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the board appoints E-Rate Consulting, Inc. as the consultant for connection with the E-Rate program for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Let it be resolved that the board appoints EI Associates as the architect of record for 2024. These services are exempt from public advertising for bids under New Jersey statutes annotated 18A/3. Number 10, let it be resolved that the board approves Westchester Environmental LLC as the environmental vendor of record for 2024. Number 11, let it be resolved that the following statutory appointments and designations of the Board of Education be adopted. Bylaws, regulations, and policies of the Board of Education. B, existing curricula, textbooks, programs, and services. C, existing chart of accounts. D, existing parliamentary procedures. E, existing code of ethics, which was already discussed earlier. F, existing contracts between the Board of Education and Denville Education Association / support staff. Denville's Administrators Association. G, the following appointments: the Business Administrator Board Secretary Damaris Gorowski. Number 2, Assistant Board Secretary to be determined. Number 3, Treasurers of School Money Paula Hatch. 4, Affirmative Action Officer John Englishman. 5, School Physician Medical Inspector Dr. Greenfield. 6, Asbestos Management Officer to be determined. 7, AHERA Coordinator to be determined. Number 8, Right to Know Consultant to be determined. Number 9, Custodian of Petty Cash Fund Damaris Gorowski. Number 10, Purchasing Agent Damaris Gorowski. Number 11, Indoor Air Quality Designee Damaris Gorowski. Number 12, Integrated Pest Management Coordinator Damaris Gorowski. Number 13, Custodian of Record Damaris Gorowski. Number 14, Public Agency Compliance Officer Damaris Gorowski. Number 15, 504 Committee Coordinator Christina Theodoropoulos. Number 16, Safety and Health Designee, Jessica Seidel, Head Nurse. Number 17, Chemical Hygiene Officer, Damaris Gorowski. Number 18, Psychological Examiner Coordinator, Amy Farley. Number 19, Homeless McKinney-Vento Liaison, Amy Farley. Number 20, Anti-Bullying Coordinator, Grace Johnson. Number 21, HIB Specialist, Deborah Maneri, Mary Beth Hall, Morgan Kane, Jody McDonald, Brian Pascal. Number 22, Educational Stability Liaison, Grace Johnson. Number 23, Attendance Officer, Colleen Waislick. Number 24, LEA, New Jersey SLA, IT Contact, Cynthia Costanza. Number 25, State Testing Coordinator, NJSLA Coordinator, Dr. Sandra Cullis. Number 26, District ESSA Coordinator, Dr. Sandra Cullis. Number 27, District IDEA Coordinator, Grace Johnson. Number 28, District Residency Officer, Jeff Oster. Number 29, School Safety and Security Specialist, Evan Scala and Damaris Gorowski. Number 30, Liaison to Denville Police, Dr. Stephen Forte. Number 31, Pass the Trash Law Consultants, Gray Law Group. H, the following newspapers as the official newspapers to publish legal notices of the Board of Education: Daily Record and Star Ledger. Number I, the following institution for investments and depositories of board funds: the Provident Bank. J, the following institutions for health benefits: Aetna, Benacard, and Delta Dental. Number 12, let it be resolved that the Board of Education approve the following companies as as tax shelter annuity companies and to receive exchanges or transfers under the district's tax shelter annuity plan for the Denville School District: MetLife Investors, AXA Equitable, Lincoln Investment Planning Incorporated. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education approve Plan Connect as the third-party administrator, TPA, for the 403B and 457B to perform certain plan administration, plan compliance, and related services. Number 14, let it be resolved that the board approve to provide Chapter 256 health benefits for domestic partnerships under Chapter 256 PL 2003. Let it be resolved that the Board of Education approve the following resolution for bid threshold and appointment of qualified purchasing agent for Denville Township School, subject to the provision of New Jersey SA 18A 18A-1. Be it resolved, the board authorizes the purchasing agent to purchase certain goods or services from those approved New Jersey state contract vendors on file in the purchasing office pursuant to all the conditions of the individual state contracts. And whereas 18A 18A-3 permits a Board of Education to authorize its purchasing agent to award contracts that do not exceed in a contract year the annual limit as established by the governor. And whereas legal boards of education have been advised by the local finance board through LFN 2010-13, as the governor has authorized the following bid and quotation thresholds effective July 1st, 2020. Bid threshold, base amount, bid threshold is $32,000. For base amount, quotation threshold is $4,800. With qualified purchase agent, bid threshold is $44,000 and quotation threshold is $6,600. Whereas Damaris Gorowski, Business Administrator, Board Secretary, possesses a qualified purchasing certificate. Whereas the State Treasurer, in conjunction with the Governor and pursuant to New Jersey NJSA 52:34-7 and New Jersey State Statute 18A 18A-3B, has increased the bid threshold amount for school districts with qualified purchasing agent from $40,000 to $44,000 effective July 1st, 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Denville Board of Education pursuant to NJSA 18A 18A-3A and NJAC 5:34-5.4 establishes the sets the bid threshold amount of $44,000 for the Board of Education. Further authorizes Damaris Gorowski, School Business Administrator, Board Secretary, the qualified purchasing agent, to award contracts in full accordance with NJSA 18A 18A-3A for those purchases that do not exceed the aggregate of the newly established bid threshold amount. 16, be it resolved that the governing body hereby appoints Mrs. Damaris Gorowski as the qualifying purchasing agent to exercise the duties of a purchasing agent pursuant to NJSA 18A 18A-2B with the specific relevance to the authority, responsibility, and accountability of the purchasing activity of the Board of Education. Whereas Mr. Kim has been elected president of the Board of Education, whereas Dr. Stephen Forte has been appointed superintendent of school, and whereas Mrs. Damaris Gorowski has been appointed school business administrator, board secretary, and whereas Mrs. Paula Hatch has been appointed treasurer of schools money. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board establish the following bank accounts at the Provident Bank, Denville, New Jersey, and the Provident Bank is hereby requested, authorized, and directed to honor all checks, drafts, and other orders for the payment of monies drawn in the name of the Board of Education in the following accounts, where when being the true or approved facsimile signature indicated. Payroll account, 2 signatures, 1 treasurer of schools money, 2 business administrator. Payroll agency account, 2 required signatures, treasurer of schools monies, and board administrator. Unemployment account, 2 signatures required, treasurer of schools money and business administrator. Capital reserve account, 3 signatures required, board president, treasurer of schools money, and business administrator. Current account, 3 signatures required, board president, treasurer of school monies, and board business administrator. Milk fund account, 2 signatures required, treasurer of school monies, business administrator. General organization account, 1 signature, business administrator. Flex 125 account, 1 signature, business administrator. Elementary enrichment, 1 signature required, business administrator. 17, be it resolved that the board approve the following vendors and services for the purpose of evaluations and intervention services. 1, Tri-County Behavioral Care. 2, Prime Healthcare Services, St. Clair's LLC. 3, North Jersey Center for Comprehensive Mental Health. 4, St. Joseph's Regional Medical Center. 5, Morris Psychological Group. 6, Speech and Hearing Associates. 7, Educational Services Commission of Morris County. 8, Learning Tree Multilingual Evaluation and Consulting. 9, PG Chambers. 10, Dr. L. Haynes and Associates. 11, Summit Speech School. 12, Progressive Therapy. 13, Sunbelt Staffing. 14, The Uncommon Thread. 15, Astavedic LLC. 16, DC Fagan Psychological Services. 17, Behavioral Therapy Associates. 18, Delta T Group. 18, be it resolved that the board approve the following instruments for the purpose of staff evaluation: the Danielson and NJDOE Reflective Practice Evaluation Instruments for all teaching and other certified staff, in-house instrument for non-certificated and central office staff, Marshall instrument for principals and vice principals, the NJSBA instrument for superintendent. Number 19, be it resolved that the board approve the following vendors to provide temporary personnel as needed: Educational Services Commission of Morris County, Hunterdon County Educational Services Commission, Delta T Group, Biata Nursing, Swing Education, Horizon Healthcare Staffing. 20, be it resolved that the board approve the Denville Township School Employees Health Benefits Waiver payments, whereas NJSA 5214-17.31A in conjunction with NJSA 5214-17.46.11 permits employers participating in the School Employee Health Benefit Plan to unilaterally establish an amount to be paid to employees who agree to waive their health benefit coverage in exchange for a cash payment, and whereas the employer has sole discretion as to whether or not to offer employee health benefit waiver payments, which are not subject to the collective bargaining process in accordance with NJSA 5214-17.31AC. And whereas the Board of Education previously offered an incentive for eligible employees who waive medical insurance in the amount of 25% or $5,000, whichever is less, of the amount saved by the employer because the employee waiver of coverage pursuant to the applicable collective negotiations agreement between the Board of Education and the Denville Township Education Association, and whereas the Board of Education is exercising its discretion in accordance with NJSA 5214-17.31AC to offer an incentive for eligible employees who waive medical insurance. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Township of Denville, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, that it will offer an incentive for eligible employees who waive medical insurance in the amount of 25% or $5,000, whichever is the amount saved by the employer because of the employer's waiver of coverage. And be it resolved, therefore, further resolved, that an employee who has health benefits coverage through a spouse from another source other than the state health benefit plan or SEHBP and who can demonstrate the same to the business administrator may elect to forego all or a portion of his or her medical, dental, and or prescription coverage for a full year and receive a cash payment of 25% of the premium savings to the Board of Education or $5,000, whichever is less, of the amount saved by the employer. Said payment will not be considered salary, nor will it be considered pensionable. The business office shall provide the forms of which an employer shall waive coverage and apply for payment. And be it resolved, further resolved, that an employee who has waived all or a portion of his or her medical benefits coverage will be allowed to restore such coverage in an immediate basis without the necessity of a health questionnaire for the employee or his or her family members in the event of a hardship or change of life event. Reentry into all health benefit coverage for reason of hardship or change of life applies only in the following situations, which results in the loss of health benefits coverage through the employer's spouse or other source. Termination of employment, proof of termination of benefits required. Legal separation, a copy of the decree is required. Group contract, policy termination, proof of termination of benefits required. Disability of spouse, which eliminates benefits, proof of termination of benefits required. Divorce, a copy of the decree is required. Death of a spouse, a copy of the death certificate is required. Military discharge, a copy of DD 214 is required. Application under these circumstances must be made within 60 days of the life event to the Board of Education's Payroll and Benefits Office. In addition, any employee who has waived all of his or her health benefits coverage may automatically restore his or her coverage by applying during the open enrollment period during any year. The reinstatement date under such condition will be January 1st. It will not be necessary for any employee or his or her family members to complete a statement of health, proof of insurability, to restore coverage during the open enrollment period. Number 21, be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the 2024 anticipated contracts to be renewed, awarded, and or expire during the school year, PL 2015, Chapter 47. Pursuant to PL 2015, Chapter 47, the Denville Board of Education intends to renew, award, or permit to expire the contracts previously awarded by the Board of Education. These contracts have been, and will continue to be in full compliance with all state and federal statutes, regulations, and particularly New Jersey Title 18A, 18, etc., sequential, NJAC Chapter 23, and federal procurement regulations, 2 CFR Part 200.317, etc., sequential. Be it resolved that the board approves setting the non-residential tuition rate for the 2024-2025 school year at the following rates: kindergarten $10,000, grade 1 through 5 $12,000, grade 6 through 8 $14,000. Be it resolved that the governing board hereby appoints a school business administrator, board secretary, and superintendents of schools as the backup person to make payment using an electronic funds transfer and claimant certificate, EFT, method in accordance with NJSA 18A 19-1, etc., sequential, and a policy and regulation 6470.01. Be resolved that the Board of Education approves Cynthia Costanza, Director of Technology, as the website accessibility coordinator. 25, last but not least. Be resolved that the board approve the joint transportation agreements with the following entities to provide transportation to students to athletic events and trips for the 2024-2025 school year as needed: Wharton School District, Rockaway Borough School District, Rockaway Township, Morris Hills Regional School District, Morris County Vocational School District, Parsippany Troy Hills School District, Boonton School District, Boonton Borough, Roxbury Board of Education, Hapakon Cooperative, Little Learners School.
I would like to second. I would also like to nominate Mr. Anderson for Board Member of the Year. Let's just.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Capello. Certainly impressed. Is there caffeine in that water, sir? I mean, that was really great. Any discussion? Seeing that there's none, roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis.
Yes.
All right, following that performance, Mr. Capello, would you be able to run us through the adoption of the public meeting calendar, please?
I would be happy to. If there are no objections, I would like to move that the board adopt the attached 2024 Board of Education public meetings calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Thank you, Mr. Cass. Discussion?
Just a quick comment. We, because if you remember a few years ago, we had a January 1 reorg. That's why we changed it to 6 o'clock. So we've just been doing 6, but to make it less confusing, we made it back to 7 for next year, unless somebody has an issue with that. But we just felt like there were so many, everything else is 7. So this is the only one is 6. So we made it 7.
Got it. Thank you. I also want to bring attention that our next board meeting, January 22nd, is in the community room. I noticed that on the schedule as well. So it will not be here in the chambers. It will be in the community room, so for the public as well. I'm sure announcements will be made. The other thing that I noticed is that the May meetings were back to back. So I'm not sure if any of the board members had any objections to that, or if they preferred the week off before we had our second regular session meeting.
It's due to Memorial Day, but that's a busy time for hiring. So I would prefer to have those 2 meetings in a row, even though it's not ideal, but because we do so much hiring, then it's important.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, my personal preference is to stay away from the holiday. So yeah, I think, yeah.
Agreed. I was thinking about moving the work session up 1 week, but if it's too hard for the administration, then I have no objections. Then. Okay. Roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis.
Yes.
Great. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, good of the cause, correspondence, discussion items, anything else. We already went through the code of ethics earlier in the agenda, so I scratched that off. Curiously, the next meeting is at 7 o'clock. So are we going to have a break then in between, or do we want to roll right into the next meeting?
We can roll right into. That's how we have done it.
All the times have been changed. You just have we printed those out before we made the changes.
Oh, I see. So that
All
also
the times
applied
are
to,
accurate.
it
Right.
applied to the next agenda as well.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had one thing actually, since this meeting, we were talking about committees. I had a conversation with Mr. Anderson earlier in the week, and we were talking about the Space Committee from last year, which obviously was an ad hoc committee. We were talking about, and I don't want to speak for him, I'll let him chime in, but we were talking about maybe the benefit of continuing that, recharging that committee, because I think there's still work to do. And one of the big items is we left kind of an open item of coming up with a monitoring framework, to be able to kind of see when we were hitting, when we were starting to hit yellow, red, in terms of capacity, in terms of what that looks like, and also revisiting our policy about the overall class sizes. And he had a really interesting point. Again, I'm not going to speak for him, but I'll summarize that, we haven't really looked back to see when in past history have we come close to, or maybe even exceeded briefly those numbers. It'd be interesting to know that, right? Because if we never have, or if we have at certain times, I think that may give us an indication of, what we need to do when we start to get to those numbers, or maybe we want to revise the policy. So, again, our thought was maybe kind of take it and really rip the policy apart and maybe look at it and decide if maybe those numbers are they still accurate? Would they need to be adjusted? Could they be adjusted? And what would that do to the overall plan? So I don't know, Mike, did I summarize that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Dino. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think what I took away from the strategic planning meeting was there was a desire for a lot of things to not change, right? And one of them was the smaller class sizes. I think we all recognize that we probably can't keep our existing class sizes with the additional population coming in. or projected population, I should say, based upon the demography study. But where is that point, right? We talked about like kind of that report. I think it was a phenomenal amount of work done with that space committee. I think like kind of taking that to the next level. The other thing that's interesting, I was talking to even Dr. Forte about this as recently as today, just about taking the additional projected population and adding in our special ed layers to understand how many more out of district placements are we going to have potentially? What would that cost look like? How many more resource rooms may we need? I mean, we only know what we have right now. We probably have a good idea of our percentages. If they stay the same, we're going to have to use that number. But just without getting into too much detail, I think these are interesting things that that committee could dig into. I think we talked a little bit about the IMP committee taking on some conversation on the class size policy. I think it may be better suited to go to the space committee. Just my opinion on it. But I think it's a great opportunity to take the huge amount of work that's been done and seeing, can we take it to the next level? And I think that was part of what Mr. Kim presented to the board a few weeks ago. But I think it's a great opportunity to continue it and really kind of add on to the work that's been done.
Dr. Forte, you want to add anything to that or make some comment?
Well, I really am recommending a transportation task force to be started, not just a transportation committee, but something bigger than that, with a little more teeth and coming up with a real, like a kind of way we did it with the space considerations. But, you know, there's only so much bandwidth, right? But I think right now, considering all the things we've been going through recently with either personnel and the flooding, I think if we just assume we're going to continue going on as is, I think we really need to come up with some serious solutions to some issues in the transportation. So maybe we shift gears a little bit and focus on the transportation for a few months, the next half of the year, something like that, and then maybe come back to space considerations. But I'm okay with trying to do both if you want. But I really would like to have some focus on transportation. And I'd like Mr. Kim to be on it too, if that's possible. I know you're the president, you're the one who decides, but I would like to have you on there, just like the way you dealt with some of the things in the other committee. And I'd really like to come to some kind of plan that's actually gonna work down the road.
I mean, and Mr. Kim, certainly up to you, but one of the things to think about is we have typically, at least since I've been on the board, charged a security committee. That security committee is critically important, but also really meets like twice a year, right? Usually like just a check-in twice a year. And part of that is because I think the administration does such a great job with it throughout the year that it's just kind of a board check-in to make sure that we understand the priorities and we can prioritize funds and whatever we need to do. I guess my point is could we take and maybe reconfigure a little bit on the B&G committee and take security, put them under B&G, and instead of tasking a separate security committee, maybe that's the transportation committee. Just an idea. I mean, because I think we've always kind of charged it, and I think it's important to recognize, but we also may want to recognize it because I just think the importance of it. So either way, I think it's good. But that's a really good point, Dr. Forte. I think transportation is going to be a big challenge.
No, and I know you had expressed this in a conversation you and I had. I think a lot of what happened in the last few weeks has obviously brought, some of our transportation challenges to the fore in terms of even where we store our buses, even our bus carrier, our facilities. I think we do need to maybe look beyond what we've been doing for a long time. My only concern about not doing the space consideration committee kind of immediately or punting it to the second part of the year is I think we have some momentum with it now. I think we have our heads around a lot of the data. So I kind of liking Mike's idea of trying to do both if possible. I understand there's bandwidth issues, but I think both are important. So again, just my feeling.
I could discuss the topic in the next IMP and make a recommendation on what academically class size range would be. And I can also gather the data of when our class sizes were 26. I think when I got here it was 26 in 4th and 5th grade, which is higher than anything I've had since, but I can gather that data of when those numbers were.
Because what's interesting is, and Mr. Cass can probably speak to this because he was, I think, on the board or coming on the board right at that time. There was obviously a push for another middle school years ago, right? So I'd really like to understand what were those numbers coming into there, because that'll give us an idea of where the public is going to start saying, okay, whoa, we really need, some more classroom space here. So if that comes to that point, right? I don't know whether it would or wouldn't. I mean, it's really hard to predict because you talk about individual sections and you talk about, how where kids are going to come in, what grades they're going to be in as the new students come into the district. But I think we generally have some idea. It's just history might help us a little bit here to understand what the threshold, I think Mr. Capello said, the threshold for pain that the public might have as far as where they kind of feel. And I think we've come a long way getting rid of substandard space. We got ourselves into substandard space because, of classroom space sizes and whatnot. And we've obviously made some changes since then, but still, I think I agree with Mr. Capello. I think we've got some momentum here, and I think it would be a good idea to kind of keep it going. And if that means that the board's got to stretch a little bit and have a couple extra committees for 6 months, let's do it. I mean, I think as Mr. Kim said, let's challenge each other to step up. And I think Dino volunteered for both of them, I think.
You know what? After you read that Magnus Opus, I'm up for it, Mike. Absolutely. Maybe again, Mr. Kim, this is totally up to you. But maybe there's a graded approach. Maybe we hit transportation early in the year, and maybe 3 months in, then maybe we restart the space committee. Maybe you kind of you temper it in a little bit just to maybe that bandwidth isn't as bad in the beginning of the year, especially during budget season. I mean, that's the other critical piece here, right? So that's going to, I recognize that's tough.
That is just what I was going to mention, Mr. Capello, because if we usually start making our classes May 1st. And so the budget, obviously, if we have to hire more teachers. So if we're making any changes for 24, 25, or if we're just discussing it for 25, 26, so maybe when you see the initial data for next year, are we discussing it? You just have to decide, are we discussing it for 24, 25 or 25, 26?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're discussing with any time frame in mind. I think this is more about putting together a regimen, an idea of, we talked about monitoring, we talked about coming up with metrics that once we start hitting these numbers or seeing these class sizes or seeing these impacts, we need to start going back to, what we need to do space-wise. So this is really just about putting that plan in place, those metrics. I think this is much more kind of theoretical than that. Again, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you got to keep the space committee on the front burner, and also make sure we are transparent and keep the public informed on exactly where we are with it as part of the strategic plan. I think it's really, really important not to, just stay active with it internally, but also externally, make sure the public knows what's going on. As for the transportation issues, unless I'm missing something, I don't know why they couldn't, and we're talking about, we started out with it, doing more legislatively, right? Which I've been barking about forever. And it comes down, not because we're lazy, we don't want to do it. It's just a matter of time with all these other balls we're trying to juggle at the same time. But to me, the main issues with the busing is, first of all, is the staffing, the hiring of bus drivers. That's a countrywide issue that trickles down to all the districts. And also the recent flooding reminds us that bus garage is in a real bad place. And I can't tell you when it's going to flood again, but it probably will. And, you have a plan in place where we move the buses to the high ground. That's great. But also with the flooding around the area, can you move them the next day or for 2 or 3 days? I mean, sometimes the town's been out of commission for 3 days in terms of moving vehicles around. And then you have all your tools and everything, your diagnostic equipment in there, which you can't get at. So that's, so to me, it's like, hiring and moving the bus garage are the two issues with that, unless you have other things. But, and that's the way it's always been with the bus garage. It's right there on the river. So, where do you move it? I'm not going to resolve it tonight, but where are you going to move it to? And how do we continue to address the driver shortage? And that ties into the legislative, because I talked to Dan before he left. He said at one time you had people lining up at his door. All the moms were there to drive a bus and work it with their kids' schedule. And he says they put in so many regulations about, you got to know what a piston is, where it is, the battery, all these components of the engine. You got to be a mechanic. You had the knowledge of a basic mechanic to drive a school bus, which is unnecessary. The bus breaks down on the road, you're going to call for help. You're not going to get out and start wrenching what's wrong with a bunch of kids in the bus.
I don't want to say it's strategic planning, but it is, obviously, in the long run. I think the committees itself are space and transportation together, or the future of Denville kind of together. So I think the committees would work together, put space and transportation. But I don't know what it's called. Future planning, strategic planning. So, the committee itself. It's not space consideration anymore. It's delving into the future of what the district is going to look like. So district development, perhaps, is what it is.
Either way, I'd have to think about, but both have to be there. I think the space considerations are still pretty important, given that any increase is sort of in contradiction to what was discussed at the strategic planning meeting, and figuring out what number is the number to begin to think about what we need to do, because it can't be too far down the road or it's too late. And I think that increased numbers are going to there's going to be a snowball effect. I would predict that larger numbers are going to equal more IEPs and other difficulties as class sizes get larger, that there's going to be other problems too. So I think that there's a lot to be discussed and thought about there. So I wouldn't want that to go on the back burner. Whether they're merged together, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, thank you everyone for chiming in and discussing. There's definitely a lot to think about and talk about, and I'm probably going to reach out to everyone individually to get some more thoughts. One of the thoughts I did have is, like, for example, the transportation. I know that there's a lot of vendors that specialize in solving districts' problems with software and stuff like that. So, I'm wondering, what other areas can vendors come in and help us try to solve problems? And, that could be sort of their sales pitch as well. Similar to when we had the social media attorneys come into each of the committees to sort of present their case and tell us why we should be comfortable with them. I'm wondering if for some of these other issues that we have, can we have vendors come in to help present what their capabilities are and how they can address some of the issues. So I know that during the workshop, the trade floor, those are some of the things that I was hearing from some of the vendors. So space considerations could be something else as well. But yeah, I definitely think that we need to keep the momentum with the space considerations forward, keep it going. So, Dr. Forte, I'll talk to you, on the side. We'll put our heads together and get some other thoughts in there as well. So any other questions or comments then? One of the other things I wanted to bring up is, during these meetings, could we have more of these other groups that we reach out to, or that we sort of send a liaison to? I don't know if anyone had thoughts on inviting them to present what their events are going to happen for the year and stuff like that. That was something that occurred to me. So is that something that other board members think that they might welcome the invitation to come and present what they're doing on their side of their organization?
What, explain that a little bit more. I guess I'm not understanding exactly.
So we have liaisons and liaisons, our board liaisons
Oh,
come
got
back
it.
and, yeah, gives us an update. Would we, if we opened the floor up to them and had them come in and personally present, what's going to happen? So we're like with the Pride or the other organizations that we send liaisons to.
Yeah. No, I think there may be some organizations that are definitely interested. So I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we'll discuss that and discuss that in future meetings as well. So if there's nothing else for the good of the cause, I'll go ahead and open comments to the public at 6:55 PM. All right, seeing no one in the chambers and no one online, I'll close open public comments at 6:55 PM. Is there a need for an executive session?
Not after this one, but we will have one after the next one.
Great. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Okay, the organization meeting is closed at 6:55 PM. 6:56 PM, forgive me. We're going to go right into the working session. Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting on January 2nd, the work session, which is at 6:56 PM. This meeting of the Denville Township Board of Education is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Daily Record and/or the Star Ledger of Morris County, has been delivered to the Township Clerk, and has been posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office and at each of the school buildings in the district. Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Mrs. Adelis,
Here.
Dr. Moore,
Here.
Mr. Kim,
Here?
Mr. Cass,
Here.
Mr. Capello.
Here.
Since there's no need for an executive session, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, under no special presentations today, so superintendent's comments. Dr. Forte?
Okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the flood. The flood on the 18th was definitely a challenge. It was not forecast to be as bad as it ended up being. And I just want everybody to know I was in constant contact with our OEM while we were going through this process. Our staff stepped up as usual and did a great job under some really difficult circumstances. I'm not sure how many of you were driving around, but roads were closing every minute. And I was running the bus garage communications with the drivers and anybody who called. And I could tell you how things were changing by the minute. Like it was saying, Old Booton Road closed, but buses can get through. And then 5 seconds later, Old Booton Road closed to everybody. And that was what was going on. So you can just imagine some of the drivers to get from Lakeview to Riverview had to go through Mountain Lakes, go down like by the Votech, make a right, make a left by the new Wawa, go down the boulevard, go down, then down Pocono, which then got closed. So it was really a challenge, and I can't say enough about how great everybody was. And then the next morning, we were trying to get open on time, and I was out, 4 o'clock in the morning looking to see what the flooding was like, and it looked like it was unpassable. Then I said, let me check one more time, and I went around 5:30, and it was still too much. So that's why we had to close. But by that time, our drivers were already at not the bus garage, because the bus garage was underwater. They had to move the buses all the way to Lakeview. So they were already on duty, which, was tough, but that's the way it works sometimes. And then we were able to call the delay. And the reason why I called the delay and not a closure was because at about 5:30 in the morning, it looked as if, and also speaking with our town, it looked as if it was going to clear up. And by the time the staff had to drive on River Road, there was no more like side to side puddling. There was puddling on the sides, but it didn't go through the entire thing. So that was basically how everything worked. It was definitely a challenge. We had to get our buses out pretty much at the last minute. And I can't say enough about how everybody, and even the community, the parents, the kids, everybody, there was kids were over an hour late, more than that, hour and a half late getting home. And, it's odd. Like when you put these messages out, I say they're going to be late, right? Maybe I should have to say they're going to be really late, like super late. I don't know how late is late, right? So, when kids were a half hour late, people were asking, and obviously, right, because they expect maybe a half hour, but it turned out to be an hour and a half. Also, I want to point out something else that I thought was really nice, and I could hear all this because I was running the communications. Some of the drivers that were coming from Lakeview, like I said, got stuck going through Mountain Lakes, and then those roads get closed. And what I would hear was, "Hey, I just dropped off my last kid. Can I help?" That's what I heard a few times. So the bus driver, then we would say, "Yes, please go and take so-and-so's run from Riverview because they're not going to get there for another 40 minutes." So those people went and did that. So really, it's really a testament to just a great cooperative effort of everybody. The police were great. They were helping us the whole time, OEM, and everybody did as best as we possibly could. And I have to say, like, I try to look at it back and forth a few times. What would you have done differently? With the same information, I wouldn't have done anything differently. If I had the information of what we thought what actually happened before it happened, right? We might have closed school that day. We would have closed school that day, but obviously I didn't have that information. I kept Mr. Capello apprised. I told him it was definitely not a normal day. And I wanted him to know that there was just emergencies, that things had to be done. That is not what we usually do. But in the end, we got through it. And again, I can't thank the community, the staff enough for everything they did. So that's my only comment for today.
Wow, great. Thank you. And yes, Dr. Forte, I want to echo what you just said. I heard great things and how everyone stepped up, and I really hand it to, Ms. Greenhagen and the rest of the transportation group. They truly stepped up. It's a tightly knit group, it sounds like, and that's super appreciated. So thank every one of them for us. Okay, moving on. The assistant superintendent comments, please. Dr. Cullis.
I just want to thank all of the Denville families for the generous donations. We had overwhelming success with the toy drives and the food collections. I mean, the community room was absolutely filled with toys. That was just from Riverview. We also had that from Valley View and Lakeview, and we had the food as well. So we had a lot of contributions. So it's so nice to work in a community that cares so much about those that may not have as much this time of year. So thank you to the community. This concludes Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you for that. Business administrator comments, please.
No comments.
Understood. Thank you. And so I'll open up public discussion, agenda items only at 7:03 p.m.
No one on the computer.
Great, thank you. And seeing no one in the chambers, I'll go ahead and close open comments section at 7:04 p.m. Mr. Anderson, can you help us with the old business, no action to be taken, please?
Sure. At the next meeting, myself or someone else will move us through old business that includes reports from December 2023, Treasurer School Money Board Secretary, education reports, including student enrollment, report of health office, and one HIB case, LV.23.24.03, and the minutes from the work session and executive session from December 11th, as well as a special session meeting on December 15th.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, in that case, then we'll move right into new business action to be taken. Ms. Adelis, can you run us through personnel, please?
Sure. I move to approve the following resolutions under personnel. Be it resolved that we approve the following stipends for A, B, C, as stated, D, as stated in the agenda, and the resignations, unfortunately, of 2, E, and F, and the retirement of G. Be it resolved, the board retroactively approve the leave of absence for 3 individuals, beginning retroactively for November and 1 in December, and then 1 commencing in January 9th of this year. And then please direct your attention to the addendum to the agenda, your yellow piece of paper for the resignation of H. Thank you.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just a quick one. So are we in search of an LDTC now for Riverview?
We are.
I also just want to offer my congratulations to Ms. Shine on her retirement. She has to have been a pretty long-term, you said 35 years in Denver, at here. Yeah, that's what, okay, wow. Well, that's
1989, I think.
that's got to be close to that. Yeah. Well, congratulations to her. That's awesome. She well deserved.
And congratulations to Mrs. Gallagher. She is moving on to a principal's position. So we've enjoyed having her on our child study team as well as our teacher in charge at the Riverview Annex for a number of years. So congratulations to both Ms. Gallagher and Ms. Shine.
I'm going to miss Miss Molina. Her documents that she's been creating for the board is really impressive. So
She is a big loss for the district. She has been such a great asset in our board office and a quick learner, great organization skills, and we're dearly going to miss her.
okay, if there's no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to finance. I'll go ahead and take this one real quick. I motion that we approve the following resolutions under finance, that we accept a donation of a Mimaki UJF inkjet printer and supplies from Mr. John Parisian. B, that number 2, that we accept donations of new cabinets for the Lakeview faculty room. That will be sponsored by the Lakeview PTA for the amount of $1,838. And number 3, to provide tutoring services funded through the NJ High Impact Tutoring Grant. And we're going to hire Board Hate Tutor Inc. For Riverview and Lakeview schools for a combined of 63 hours per week.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments?
I just want to point out that the first donation is from Mr. Parisian, who is a board member here in Denville, longtime resident, board member, and apparently we can't get rid of him, even though he moved down to Virginia, I believe. But his company's still here, so that's a really great donation.
I also want to thank the Lakeview PTA. That seems like a very generous donation for the cabinets, and I'm sure the faculty will greatly appreciate it at Lakeview.
I also wanted to just say that the donation from Mr. Parisian included a delivery by the MHRD staff, which was nice because they got one as well. I kind of facilitated for them and they dropped it off so we didn't have to send somebody to Bergenfield. And that device is new is about $35,000. So it's a pretty nice donation.
Steve, what would we be using that for? I mean, like, is that a classroom thing or more an operational thing?
In the STEM room, in Valley View STEM room, it's like a real high-end printer that you can do like high resolution things and larger than you could.
It's a large format, like one of those that you can, yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's big.
Cool.
It's going to need to sit on a table like that size.
Right. Okay.
Great. Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes.
All right, moving on to Mr. Cass, if you can take us through operations, please.
Be glad to. Transportation, we have nothing to resolve. But number 2, building and grounds, we have some items here. 2.1, I'm asking the board to approve to award Jersey One as the highest responsible bidder in accordance with the district bid document requirements and public school purchasing laws for the sale of the following items as follows. We have a trailer, brand Doolittle, age 20 years old, for $468. An enclosed trailer, brand Danzer, model Morrison, year 2013, for $1,228. A water cannon reel, brand water cannon reel, $268. 2.2, asking the board to approve to award Joseph Ciricella, the highest responsible bidder in accordance with the district's bid documents, requirements, and public school purchasing laws for the sale of the following item. A zero-turn ride-on mower. It's Toro Model Z Master 74272 for $500. 2.3, I'm asking the board to approve the attached quote option 1 from Lakeland Surveying to survey board property on Nicole Drive as well as the adjacent property at 46 Nicole Drive, which is under contract for the purchase by the board at a cost of $6,800. Item 2.4, I'm asking the board to approve the attached revised contract for the purchase of land located at 46 Nicole Drive, Denville, New Jersey. The contract price, including applicable closing costs, is for $600,368.08. The appraised value of $600,000 plus applicable closing costs of $6,368.08. The purchase is contingent upon attorney review, inspections, the New Jersey Department of Education approval. The purchase will be funded with capital reserve per subchapter 14, reserve account 6A 23A-14.1. Item 2.5, asking the board to approve the attached memorandum of agreement with law enforcement per New Jersey AC 6A 162B 13-14 for the 2023-2024 school year. Item 2.6, I'm asking the board to approve the attached memorandum of understanding with law enforcement regarding live stream camera video sharing for the 2023-2024 school year per New Jersey SA 18A 14-9.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Kim, I would like to make a friendly amendment to item 2.4. The closing cost should be $3,639, and the sales cost is $600,000 for a total cost of $603,639.
This was a last minute change today.
Mr. Cass, Mr. Anderson, are you okay with those changes?
I'm good.
Yes.
Comments, discussion?
We'll take any changes that are a $3,000 savings. Thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes.
Excellent. Moving on through the agenda, we're into the new business, no action to be taken. Mrs. Zidelis, can you run us through personnel, please?
Sure. At the next meeting, myself or someone else will go through personnel items, which will remain nameless, which we will discuss at the next meeting.
Thank you. I didn't realize it was empty as well, so. If there are no discussion items or no discussion in this section, we'll move on to instruction and program. Mr. Capello, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I or another board member at the next meeting will be moving these items. One, workshops and expenses right now, including to Stephanie Avalone and Heather O'Neill, psychologist and behaviorist, to attend a workshop addressing problem behavior in schools, a contemporary and compassionate approach in New Rochelle, New York, on January the 25th. And Gina Cordero, a teacher at Lakeview, to attend the NJTESOL, NJBE, Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages Conference in New Brunswick, New Jersey, from 5/29 to 5/31/24. And number two, that the board approve the attached agreement with Brooke Arthur, executive coach, for Cindy Costanza, not to exceed $3,250.
Great, thank you. Any questions or discussion? Okay.
I had a question. Maybe it's personnel, so maybe you have to do an executive session next time. But I was wondering exactly what the executive coach training consists of. I never recall seeing anything like that before.
That's going to be approved at the next meeting. And if we want, hopefully we're going to have an IMP meeting before that. I have it on the agenda for IMP to discuss. But Don, if you want, we can talk real quick after this.
Great. Moving on to the agenda, if we can go on to policy revisions. Dr. Moore, if you want to take us through that, please.
Sure. I'd like to move to approve the following resolutions under policy revisions for first reading. P 2340 field trips and P 5120 assignment of students.
We're not voting on that today, so just for discussion. So
I have a question. We talked about this in December to put first reading. Now we're still at first reading, so which means we will not be able to approve this before our registration, kindergarten registration, February 1st.
So you're saying it should be second reading and adoption for this next meeting, right, Dr. Cullis?
For the 22nd.
That might be an error. Let me look into it.
That was for
so
assignment
that
of
policy,
students.
I think, is going to be on for second reading at the next meeting.
Does that mean field trips should also be second reading and adoption? I don't
think so. I think it was just the one.
It was just that one, because that was the one where we decided to, we asked about changing the language. Remember, to change the language around how we would assign students.
It was a little softer.
That was that language that Steve passed around.
Yeah, I did see the new policy and it looked cleaned up. So thank you. Seeing that the finance section doesn't really have much, we'll move on to operations. Mr. Cass, you want to just read through the operations sections, please?
Certainly. At the next meeting, myself or somebody else will ask the board to approve the attached addendum to the original lease dated December 1st, 2019 to the St. Mary's School property, now known as the Riverview Annex, for rental of the property from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2029.
Dr. Forte, I just want to repeat, thank you for all the work you and your team. Ms. Gorowski, I believe, was also part of that, all the work that you put into that. So thank you. Okay, if there's no questions or comments on operations, we'll move right into the good of the cause. Committee reports, correspondence, discussion items. Do we want to do board meeting highlights now?
I have three: new president and vice president, and the swearing in of new board members or re-elected board members. The purchase of the property and the lease renewal for the next meeting.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. One of the things I'd like to discuss is that On the agenda, I'd actually like to move committee reports from the good of the cause to actually under business administrator comments. I do feel that the board would benefit from. Okay, so we'd have to change the bylaws and the policy on that? Okay, great. So I think that's something I, want to actually include in the governance committee, in the ad hoc governance committee. So, but yeah, if there's any, I guess just for discussion, I feel that there would be benefit for having the committee reports be under the business administrator comments before we went into the agenda. So any comments or objections?
No, I think it's worth a try. At one time, we had done them in each section. Like we had done them like, when you got to personnel, you did it at the beginning of that section. We did that for a while. That was okay. I mean, we bounced around, but I mean, yeah, I think it's.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the cause, we'll go right into the open comment section at 7:21 p.m. I'm sure there's no one online and there's no one in the chambers, so we'll close open comment section at 7:21 p.m. Since we have a need for executive session, Dr. Moore, can you take us through that, please?
I'd like to move to convene in executive session in accordance with Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of the closed session will be to discuss negotiations, legal, security, and personnel issues. Minutes of this session will be made available to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
All in favor?
A second?
Thank you. Mr. Cass, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we are in executive at 7:22. There will be no further voting after this executive session. So, thank you.